How much of an impact do you think Nuno has had on the transfer policy in particular? Because this over the summer in particular, when everyone was kind of doing their Premier League predictions, who's going to finish where, there was a lot of talk about is he good enough, and a lot of kind of disappointment about perhaps him being the manager, and a lot of excitement about the squad. But how much of an impact do you think he has had on creating that squad and moulding it into the squad it is now?
I think if you look to the last Leicester City game,
Gatland had sort of just come in and they were flying. They made a World Cup semi-final in 2011, Grand Slam in the Six Nations 2012, and won Six Nations back-to-back in 2013 as well. And they have had a few hugely successful periods, that obviously probably being their most successful. What sort of made that era so special?
I think the big thing was sort of the Warren Ball identity.
So we're going to do a little year in review of tennis in 2024. And I mean, the best place to start on the men's side has got to be Jannik Sinner. He's had an unbelievable year. He won the most improved player last year, sneaking in a couple of titles towards the end of the calendar year. And then this year he's been unbelievable. 8 finals he's made, 7 titles. He's made the most amount of prize money, points leader as well. And he's won 2 majors. He's been absolutely dominant in the men's side, hasn't he, Sam?
The Jannik Sinner freight train doesn't look like stalling anytime soon. I mean,
I do hope it in the long run that he is remembered very fondly, because I think what he has done for English football is he's sort of just changed the culture almost, and really sort of brought out a lot of these young guys and young talent through. And obviously there's a bit of luck in some ways that players like Bellingham and Foden and Palmer have sort of come through, and I mean Saka have come through underneath him. But he's also had to have that sort of mentality to sort of play them in some ways and to sort of nurture them and develop them internationally, where you look back in the sort of the early 2000s and the mid 2000s when we had that golden generation and they were fine. They didn't really do anything for England, and they were supposedly the best players in the world at the time as well. And I mean, you can definitely argue how fortunate he's been with a lot of the draws he's received, but yet again, he's kind of done that himself. We've topped the group in the last 3 competitions. We came second somewhat purposefully in 2018, I guess you could argue, and that in itself is down to Southgate. That you look back in the times before, we didn't get out of the group stages in 2014. 2016 we lost to Iceland, which is just poor. 2010 we came second, I think, in our group behind the USA. Like there's been a load of times where with the players we've had we should have done a lot better than what we did, and the fact that international football is such a mismatch at times of quality and styles and tactics, that actually just having some sort of consistency is often very key, particularly defensive stability, which is what he really focused on early doors, and that's what in theory got us through a lot of the tough games or the tougher games in these early tournaments.
From a competitive point of view, obviously many of the clubs will have been disappointed at the time that Saracens had broken these rules and then went on to win a large proportion of the premierships that season. They didn't actually top the league that often. However, they won sort of in the postseason, in the sort of semi-finals and finals days. And arguably that's almost where their benefit came, was they had sort of the highest quality players who were able to draw that out in the big moments. But from a sort of European competitive point of view, the English Premiership haven't really been able to compete as well as France have. When you look at the sort of finalists in Champions Cup over the last, since it started in 1996, about almost 50% of the finalists have been French. They basically have won every year as a French team, and then the other sort of 25%, sort of the 50% split, about half and half with England and Ireland. The English slightly more competitive. Do you think that the English clubs are being drawn back from a competitive level? Saracens obviously managed to compete over that time, but partly only because they managed to get in the better players by arguably breaking the salary cap.
Yeah, it's a really good question, isn't it?